Today, I'm going to be talking about authenticity. How can we become ourselves? How can anyone be themselves? I'm going to begin by presenting a dilemma that shows why it's so difficult to become ourselves, possibly even impossible. However, hope is not lost. I'm going to go on to look at two philosophers, Nietzsche and Fichte, to show how they present us with a unique solution and why it might be possible to realize ourselves, to become ourselves to a pretty extensive degree. So you've probably seen ads like this one from Starbucks or this one from H&M telling you to be yourself or to join the workforce in order to become yourself and so on. However, I think these are a massive red flag. Why are they a massive red flag? Well, in order to understand this, we need to break the question down a little and first look at what the self is exactly. If we're going to become ourselves, we surely need to know what the self is. On the one side of our psyche, we have our impulses. These can be impulses to do all kinds of egoistic, hedonistic, momentary things. For example, we might want to binge watch Netflix or buy some expensive item that we don't have the money for, or buy a caramel latte full of caffeine and sugar or some fatty foods. Sometimes our impulses can be noble. For example, we might have the impulse to jump in front of a car to save a child or to give all our money away to charity. But nonetheless, giving in to our impulses too often can land us in trouble. Most people do not identify themselves with their impulses, and people that do give in to their impulses often feel remorse or regret or shame after doing so. So this is the first horn of the dilemma. We simply can't become ourselves by giving in to our impulses, by giving them free rein. And this leads us to the second horn of the dilemma, which concerns the other side of the psyche. This is our sense of social duty or sense of social expectations, the kind of rules that we follow in order to constrain our impulses. For example, we might not steal something because we're afraid of ending up in prison or because we've been taught that it's wrong. Or we might not buy the caramel latte because we're worried about the calories or the cost and the way in which society might judge us. And remember, these duties aren't just about other people. It's not just about how we behave towards other people. They can often be reflexive, be concerned with ourselves, how we should look, how we should eat, how we should take care of our health, and so on. So when we constrain our impulses, we're often doing it on the basis of these social duties and expectations, these kind of rules that have been embedded in us. But here's the catch. We don't identify ourselves with these rules either. Our sense of social duty or social expectation is the result of social conditioning, what our parents, teachers, and peers have drummed into us over the years while we were growing up. Or it can often be the product of a toxic education steeped in religious dogma. And this is why following our social duties can often feel like wearing a mask that doesn't really fit. And we often only wear this mask in order to avoid social judgment, social ostracism, or punishment. Or alternatively, we wear it because we are simply too lazy to question it. It takes hard work. So anyone that merely follows their duties is not really being themselves. They are just following the script. We cannot become ourselves by caving in to peer pressure. That is not going to be the path to being oneself. Anyone that does this is, as the saying goes, just another brick in the wall. This gives us the two horns of our dilemma. On the one hand, we can't become ourselves by giving in to our impulses, but on the other hand, we can't become ourselves by simply following convention. From this, it might seem as though there is little reason for hope. Perhaps we just can't become ourselves and we either have to give in to our impulses or give in to our sense of social duty. However, what I now want to suggest is that Fichte and Nietzsche both offer us a way out, a third way that enables us to maximally become ourselves. Let's begin with Fichte. Fichte believes there's a part of the self that transcends our impulses and our sense of social duties. He calls this part of the self our conscience. And our conscience tells us what to do and how to act in any given situation. Crucially, Fichte's conscience is not the same as our socially conditioned sense of duty. It is not simply what we feel we ought to do automatically in response to any given impulse. It is not that little angel that sat on the cartoon character's shoulder. Nor can we get our sense of conscience from any set of documents or books like the Bible, for example, or any other religious text, or the European Convention on Human Rights. There is no set rulebook for the conscience. This part of the self only emerges when we do the hard work of reflecting on our impulses and duties, establishing which are authentically ours and which are not and should be rebelled against. Incidentally, Nietzsche, this guy here, thinks pretty much the same as Fichte, that we need to access something beyond our impulses and sense of social duty. And he advocates that we try to establish what he calls our intellectual conscience. Now, our intellectual conscience lies beneath our conscience. And for Nietzsche, our conscience, or what we typically call our conscience, is really just the set of social norms or rules that society has ingrained in us. Again, for Nietzsche, our intellectual conscience is something that emerges when we reflect upon our impulses, or what he calls our drives, and our sense of social duty. However, it's important to note that for Nietzsche, we are not finding ourselves. Our intellectual conscience is not something that we discover lying deep within ourselves. It is something that we construct as we go through this process of reflection. Every time we interrogate an impulse or a social duty, we get another building block in the edifice of the self. This is why for Nietzsche, the self is an accomplishment. It is something that we build and construct and is the result of hard work. But if you thought that what Fichte and Nietzsche are asking of us is a straightforward solution, then you would be mistaken. Because how on earth are we to know that the part of ourself that is interrogating our impulses and social duties is anything other than just a deeper level of social conditioning? The simple answer is that we can't. We simply have to have faith in our critical capacities and accept that they are probably as close as we're going to get to what is authentically ours. We have to accept, therefore, that we're going to be making mistakes. Sometimes what we thought was authentically ours is going to turn out to be a product of deeper social conditioning. And then we're going to have to go through that process of interrogation again. And so it's going to be a continuous process, an iterative process of correcting mistakes and getting closer to the goal of becoming ourselves. However, the task is never going to be complete. It is never-ending and uncomfortable, and it is difficult. Now we can return to the question that we set out with. Why is it such a red flag when corporations use these slogans appealing to us to become ourselves or to be ourselves? In short, it's because they want us to give up on this hard work of self-reflection. What they want us to do is to identify ourselves with our impulses and also to cast aside our sense of social duty. So go on, just buy that caramel latte. Don't worry about the calories or the money. Beneath this lies an even more sinister ideal, the fantasy of a frictionless self, one capable of complete self-expression. However, what we've seen is that our impulses and our social duties are always going to be in conflict with one another. There is always going to be tension and friction so long as we live with other human beings. And so long as we're engaged in the project of becoming ourselves, there's also going to be friction between our impulses and social duties and our ongoing developing intellectual conscience. So the real question is, what types and degrees of friction can we tolerate? Which can we accept as genuinely ours? The dream of the perfect, effortlessly expressed self is a kind of El Dorado. It is a non-existent place, and pursuing this goal will always leave us disappointed and dejected. But this is why consumerism so effectively exploits the ideal of authenticity. These kinds of slogans offer us an unattainable, illusory ideal, one that we are going to fork over any amount of cash if we think that buying something is going to take us any closer to it. Since we value freedom so much, this illusion is incredibly powerful. But corporations do not want us to reflect on what is authentically ours. And why don't they want us to do that? Because when we do that, we are probably not going to buy the product that they're trying to sell us. Fichte and Nietzsche teach us that becoming ourselves cannot be achieved with a credit card, nor is it something that we can ever achieve completely. It is an uncomfortable and never-ending task that requires hard, solitary work. I'd like to end this video by just saying that this is the first video on my new YouTube channel, so please like and subscribe. And if you have any ideas about themes or philosophers that I should make more videos about, then please let me know in the comment section below. And if you are interested in the themes that I've been covering in today's video, then just check out this article, which I wrote a little while ago. I'll leave a link in the comment section below. Thanks, and I hope to see you soon.